Oh boy, all kinds of technical issues here. Hey folks, welcome. It's Thursday for Ask a Lawyer Live. I'm David Brannen. I'm going to be with you here for the next hour or so, maybe a little bit less, depending on if we have a lot of questions or not. And I think we're on I think this is episode 32, if I'm not mistaken. So this has been a good ride so far. I think I've only missed one day, which was earlier this week because of we were launching the law firm's new website, and I had to be available, unfortunately, to deal with that. So today, I think what we'll do is, before we dive into questions, I wanted to go through a little update on the Canada Disability Benefit. I know that's a popular topic, and often people want to know what's new, what's going on. So let's dive into this and talk a bit about it. So first of all, right now, there's not a lot new, unfortunately, but it's probably worthwhile just going over what we know now. So right now, we know that the benefit amount is going to be $2,400, $200 a month maximum. That's the maximum that people will be able to get. We know that the eligibility criteria are established now. You have to be a working age adult, so 18 to 65. You have to be approved for the disability tax credit, and you have to have filed your taxes the year before. So if you're applying this summer, you will need to file your taxes for 2024. And finally, there is the income threshold. Now, the income threshold is interesting. It depends on your status as a couple, not necessarily your household income. It's the income based on whether you're a single person or you file your taxes as a spouse or common law with someone. That's what they're going to be looking at. The income threshold, the functional income threshold is $33,000. So anyone who earns less than $33,000 would get the full. When I say earned, you have income that they would count as income. If your total income for you that they count as income is less than $33,000, then you would get the full $200 a month. If your income is between $33,000 and $45,000, then the amount you get per month will just go down slightly until you end up getting nothing. It kind of phases out over time. So there's a range of when you're in the income range of like $33,000 to $45,000 as a single person, you'll gradually get less and less of this benefit until it kind of phases out at around $45,000. Now, it's different if you're a couple. So if you have a spouse, can either be married or common law, then the income thresholds are different. They run from $46,500 right up to either $58,500 or $70,500. The difference on the upper end will depend on whether both you and your spouse receive the Canada Disability Benefit or not. And that's the difference between those two numbers. Now, what do we expect here over the next few months? Well, we know that the regulations that came out, they came out last month, but they are not coming into force until May 15th. So I expect once those regulations come into force, there may be other announcements at that time as well. They could be just waiting for that to happen. So those regulations come into force. That means that they're now legally the law, basically. That will happen May 15th. We already know from prior announcements that applications will start in June. Now, that means people are eligible to apply as of June. I don't know that necessarily means that you will be able to put in an application in June, but that is the date that you would be able to apply for benefits from. So even if you were to say you couldn't get around to it and you didn't get your application until December, you'd be able to backdate your application to take effect in June, even though you're filing later. So I don't know if the applications are actually going to be able to be filed in June, but we do know June is the effective date that they will count back to. So you can file a late application and put it back till June. Okay, payments will start. So you'll be eligible for payments as soon as if you're eligible to apply in June. Again, it doesn't necessarily mean that you actually have to have your application in June. It just means you're able to qualify for benefits as of June. And most everybody would be able to do that, even if they file their application a little bit later. So if you are approved effectively as of June 2025, you would be eligible for payments starting in July 2025. That doesn't mean you will actually see a payment in the mail in July 2025. It might take them a while to process your claim, and then you would get a retroactive payment that would go back to July. The final thing is to know is that they are approving this benefit on a rolling 1-year basis. So if you get approved, it's for 1 year from June of from July of one. You would get payments from July of 1 year until June of the next. So the first payment period is going to be from July 2025 until June 2026. I expect what will happen is to be renewed for benefits the following year, you will have to submit your taxes again. That is, they're doing this on a year by year basis because a lot of the income and how much you get is based on your tax return from the year before. So that's what they're going to look at. They're going to look at your tax return each year. So it's almost certain that you will either have to submit your taxes every year, or you will give them permission to have your taxes provided to them automatically, is probably what most people will do. But you will have to file your taxes every year. Not filing your taxes will disrupt getting paid this benefit. Now, while we're at, I don't know if anyone has any questions while we're on the topic right here, right now, of the Canada Disability Benefit. If you do, just put them in the chat. You just have to type them in the chat of the YouTube channel here that we're on, and I can take a look at those and answer them. All right. Now, so let me just see here. Okay. So if anyone has a question, you can call in live. The number is there at the bottom of the screen, 437-293-5381. And it will just bring you through right to my phone here. This is not a phone call that you can call at any time. It's only open only for the purpose of doing this show. All right. We do have a question here. So let's take a look. Do we know the LTD non-taxable benefit will be counted as income? Weird. We don't know that yet. We do not know that yet. Yeah, I'm not certain if it is going to be taxable or not. It really is going to be up to them to decide what to do. My gut feeling is that it will count as income, but that's only my educated guess. The reason is that many people who get a non-taxable benefit can get quite a lot of money. So they don't want a situation where someone is getting like $50,000 a year non-taxable LTD income and is qualifying for this benefit. The benefit is meant for people at the poverty level. So I have a feeling that they are not going to allow non-taxable. I think they're going to make it count. I would expect that that's what's going to happen, but we don't know. We don't know for sure. Okay, we got another good question here. How much harder is it getting disability tax credit compared to getting provincial disability? It is harder. It is harder in my mind because the level of disability you have to prove for the disability tax credit is often higher than what you need in order to prove that you're unable to work. So for provincial disability, you typically, and for CPP disability, you have to prove that your disability is at a level that prevents you from working. But for the disability tax credit, it is not focused on work. It's focused on whether you have major impairments with certain activities of daily living, and they're quite severe impairments. But there are ways around it. So I would encourage people to apply. I'm just saying, as a general idea, it is a higher level of disability with a disability tax credit than with CPP disability or provincial disability, but they're not really comparable because one is looking at your ability to work. The other ones are looking, do you have major impairments with certain areas of your life and activities of daily living? It doesn't look at work at all. It looks at things like your impairment with your ability to walk. So one example is like, if you struggle to walk like any type of distance, like say like a city block. So like, I'm not even sure how long a city block is, but 500 meters or so. If you have difficulty walking that far, or it would take you 3 times as long as someone who doesn't have any impairment, then you would qualify for the disability tax credit. So as you can see, like that's an example where you have an impairment with walking, but maybe you're still able to work because you have a wheelchair or a scooter to get around, or your work is such that you don't have to walk a lot. So that would be a situation where someone would qualify for the disability tax credit, but might not qualify for CPP disability because their mobility impairment prevents them from walking to the extent necessary to get disability tax credit, but not enough to prevent them from working, that they're still able to work. The other areas are going to be like you would need to have a lot of support for your activities of daily living, like dressing yourself, feeding yourself. It would have to be quite a high level of support that you weren't able to function independently to be qualified on those grounds. There is an area around mental health that is also quite severe impairment, but it is possible to qualify under that as well. There's one under having to do with life-saving treatment. So, like if you're diabetic, if you have to administer diabetic care or other type of treatment that you have to do weekly, like oxygen, anything where it's life-saving care and you have to devote a certain amount of hours per week to doing that, that can qualify you for the disability tax credit. So those are just some of the examples, but I would encourage you, if you, one thing you can do is actually look at the form. Let's bring it up right now. Actually, let's take a look at it. This will make it a lot easier for people to see. I'm going to bring it up here right now. We're going to take a look at it. Oop, that's not what I want. Let's take a look at this thing. Here it is. So this, what I'm bringing up is the disability tax credit form. It opens up. It's awful slow. Here it is. All right. Let me double check. Yeah, this looks like it. Yep, this is it. So I'm going to share my screen here. Let me do that. Whoop, that's not what I want. That's not what I want. I guess I got to upload it. So just bear with me, folks. Bear with me. Bear with me. Here we go. There it is. Let me make my screen bigger so I can read this thing. Here we go. So this is the form here. This is the form you fill out for disability tax credit. And maybe I do need to make myself a little smaller here. No, that doesn't really help at all. Nah, it doesn't really help. So the part where you can kind of tell the level of disability you need is the part here that the doctors fill out. So you can see like the areas that you can get. Let's just run through it quickly and then we'll go in more detail. So one area is vision, speaking. You can have a speaking disability, hearing, walking, eliminating, and feeding, dressing, mental function necessary for everyday life. And that's meant, okay. Cumulative effect. Okay. So life-sustaining therapy. Yep. So those are the ones. So you got life-sustaining therapy, cumulative effect of multiple limitations. That's another one. Then you've got mental functions. You've got dressing, feeding, eliminating, walking, hearing, speaking, vision. So the way it works is that you can have a major impairment in any one of these areas, and that can qualify you, or you can qualify under this part down here where it says cumulative effect. You can see here cumulative effect. You might not have a major impairment in any one of these, but the cumulative effect of multiple of these impairments can together kind of equal a major impairment overall. So that is something this is an area that most people will qualify under, because if they have multiple areas, that makes it easier, because maybe your walking isn't as bad enough on its own to get you. Maybe your hearing is not enough on its own. So that type of thing. But if you go through these, here, I'm going to have to look. I'm going to have to look at my screen here because my eyes are too small. My eyes are too old to read that. So let's look at vision first of all. Yeah, in this, the Walla said, "Do you need to apply like every few years?" I think for the disability tax, the Canada disability benefit, you probably you probably have to apply every year, but I think it's going to be an easy process to recertify it every year. That's what I think. The disability tax credit, you just apply they'll certify it for once every 5 years or 10 years. You don't have to do it every year. So let's look at vision. If you see vision here, they your name goes up at the top there, and then so your name goes up here at the top. Then there's this part that says list any conditions. And then it just for vision, it just boils down to what your visual acuity is. So your doctor fills in the amounts here, and they will just base it based off of that. I forget what the actual acuity is that you need. So if you're going to get vision, it's black or white. Like your vision will be the level that it needs to be to get it or not. I don't know what it is off the top of my head, but your doctor would fill all that in. Speaking. So this is impairments with speaking that you'd list your medical diagnosis, and then these questions kind of ask the doctor, is your patient, so this is what would qualify you. You would have to be unable, like this is, if you had a speaking disability, this is what would qualify you. Is your patient unable to speak, or do they take an inordinate amount of time? That means a lot of time to speak so as to be understood at least three. Inordinate amount of time means 3 times longer than someone of a similar age without an impairment. With a familiar person in a quiet setting, even the use. So if you have a really difficult time speaking and take 3 times as long to be understood what you're trying to say, then if your doctor put yes here, then you would qualify for the Canada Disability Benefit. Now, most people aren't going to have a speaking disorder. So the next one would be hearing. With hearing, it's the same as with, it would be number 5 here. This is what you would need to have in order to qualify. Your doctor would have to click yes to this statement here. Is your patient unable to hear, or do they take an inordinate amount of time? Or do they take an inordinate amount of time to hear so as to understand a familiar person in a quiet setting? So even with the use of appropriate therapy and medication device. So this would be with even using a hearing aid, your hearing is such that you would take an inordinate amount of time to hear and understand people in a quiet setting. So again, this is not going to be a lot of people, but that would get you, if your doctor put yes there, you would get the. Now this is walking is one where most people will get it. This is a common one. And you can see again down here, number 5, if your doctor puts yes here, then this is when you are likely going to be approved. If your doctor puts no to any of these, then you're not going to get it, right? Even if your doctor puts yes, sometimes they'll second guess your doctor, but certainly if your doctor puts no, then there's no chance of you getting this, unless it's a situation where, like I talked about, you can put multiple of these together, it can add up to give you a severe impairment. So if the doctor put no on this, but later on in this report, I'll show you here down in a minute, put in that there were multiple areas that kind of added together, that you might possibly get it. But you can see walking is the same thing. Is your patient unable to walk, or do they take an inordinate amount of time to walk? For example, a short distance such as 100 meters, even with appropriate therapy, medication, and devices. So look, if you could say, well, I can't walk 100 meters, but I can quickly, but I can if I have my cane or a thing like that. Well, this means like with therapy or devices. So even with a cane, can you walk? Do you take at least 3 times as long as someone else to walk 100 meters? If you take more than 3 times as long, if you take at least 3 times as long, then you're going to get approved here if your doctor says yes. Eliminating, this is like going to the managing bladder and bowel functions. So to get approved for that, you would have to be such that you can't manage them on your own. So you need other people to manage, like, so that would mean like helping you in and off the bathroom, changing bedpans, or anything like it would be a real high level. Or it would say that you take an inordinate amount of time to manage it. So maybe you can manage it, but you take 3 times as long as a normal person to go to the washroom, someone without any impairment. Then if that's the case, then you would get this. Otherwise, you're not going to get it. You'd have to take 3 times as long. Feeding. Oops, I'm switching my sheet, not yours. There's eliminating. That's the one I just did. Feeding. So feeding, it would be the same thing. If you look down at number 5, it says unable to feed themselves, or do they take an inordinate amount of time to feed themselves? So again, that's a very high level of disability. Feeding yourself is a very high level, a very difficult one to get. So it has to be that your other people have to feed you, or you take 3 times as long to feed yourself as someone with no impairment. Okay, you'll see the common thread here. Dressing, same thing. You either have to be unable to dress yourself, or you take 3 times as long to dress yourself as someone with no impairment, even with using devices and medications and that kind of thing. And then we got the mental functions one. This is the trickiest one to get to understand because it's quite complex, but I won't go through it all. And I'm not going to go through this one in detail here, but this one has 2 pages where the doctor can indicate limitations and things. This is a one where a lot of people are actually going to get approved. It boils down, though, to this question 7. Is your patient unable to, or do they take an inordinate? Whoops, I got to do it on this page. I apologize. Where's question 7? Is it right there? I believe it is. Nope, that's not it. I think it's right there. Yeah, I think question 7 is right there. So you either have to take unable to or take an inordinate amount of time to perform mental functions necessary for everyday life. Now, the mental functions necessary for everyday life are listed right here. So again, like you're going to have your doctor putting severe limitations in some of these, and then indicating down below here in 7, yes, unable to. Whoops. Unable to. Now, the cumulative effect, that's the next one here, like I just mentioned a minute ago. This is one where maybe your doctor put no on a couple of these, that they're not, in and of itself, you're not meeting it, but you still have a lot of impairment. So they might say, yes, there's issues with walking and mental functions, and also with that, and they can explain how together. So your doctor would down here to say together, do they all kind of add up to someone having a severe impairment? If they do, then you could be approved as well. Life-sustaining therapy. So this is really focused on like the example they give here is type 1 diabetes has been available since 2021 and years later. Looks like they've got different criteria now for that. But life-saving therapy can be things like managing diabetic medication, any other therapy that you need to to stay alive. So it's usually going to be things like oxygen therapy, hemodialysis, tube feeding, like these types of things where without them you would not be able to, you would pass away. So it's literally life-saving therapies. If those are like taking up a big part of your day, then yes, they're going to qualify as they're going to qualify. Now this part here is the certificate. So this is This is the from the doctor has to sign off on this basically and then send it in. That's it. That's the total. That's the disability application. So if you ever have questions, sometimes it's best just to look this application over as it kind of explains everything in there that you would need to know to apply. But that's what you have to apply. So you'd have to get approved for this in order to get the Canada Disability Benefit. I encourage everyone who has a chance to just apply. I've seen people get approved for the disability tax credit where I would have thought they wouldn't get approved, honestly, and they ended up getting approved. So it's all over the map. It really depends on what your doctor, like your doctor has to say that you do have such an impairment or they won't approve you. But I've seen people where I didn't think they would had a severe enough, but a doctor has said they did and they got approved. Okay. So we got a question here. It says for the disability tax credit, if you were approved for 5 years ago but need to renew this year, can your doctor just submit the same info as 5 years ago? Yeah, they can. You have to submit a new form, but they can just click off the same boxes like they did before. The form has changed. The form's probably changed since your doctor did it the last time, but certainly that's all they would have to do is just they'd have to submit a new form, but if they click the same things, you're going to be fine. They'd have to do that form that I just showed you. All right. While we're at it, let's check the I like this is good now because I use this every day now to check in on the forum. Let's go have a look at the Canada Disability Forum, see if we got any questions we can answer for people today with your help. All right. Anything new? Well, it looks like the latest one is this. I think we already answered this question last week. I didn't put an answer in here, but we answered it on the air. Yeah, this was people asking. So all this was, and probably some of you were here earlier in the week when we talked about this, but this was just a question someone had about, again, I should back up a little bit. This is the forum that my law firm runs for people, but it's a forum online where people can go and ask questions of mostly answered by other people with who have disabilities and are dealing with disability benefits and things like that. I chime in here every now and then because sometimes people ask me, but I also moderate it and I will chime in on answers if I think I have something to add. But a lot of times it's better just to let the questions be answered. This person wanted to know about, they were worried about overpayments and things. They want an explanation. They said their insurance wanted the payment explanation statement. And I was explaining that is a thing. There is a sheet that is a payment explanation statement. So when you get approved for CPP disability, they often send it all together, but sometimes they will send first a letter saying you're approved. And then once they process your claim, like the approval, you'll also get a payment explanation statement. I wish I had one to show you here. I don't have one that I have redacted. So yeah, I don't have a redacted one, so I would have client information on it. But they are basically a little chart that you get. It's a letter with a little chart that shows years. It shows payment amount and months. So it would show you the payment amount for like 2021, how many months, 12 months, and it will show you the amount for the year. Then it adds them all up on the end. So you see the total amount of the back payment. This payment explanation shows the total amount of the back payment broken down by year and how much the payment was for each year. So the insurance companies like to see that because it allows them to see what was your original CPP disability when you got approved, what was the original effective monthly rate. They need to know that. And they also want to know what months did you actually get approved for. The insurance needs to know that because one, a lot of the insurance policies only allow them to deduct the original amount that you were approved for. They are not allowed to deduct the annual increases you get from inflation. So that's one reason they like this payment explanation statement, because they can look back and see what was your original amount. They also can only offset the months that you received CPP disability retroactive that overlap with months they paid long-term disability. So they would want to double check that to see what were the actual months that are attributed to your retroactive pay to make sure that they're only giving you a clawback for those months. Yeah, I don't think I have anything to add on that one, so I'm just going to leave it as is. Wow, I'm all caught up on here. I cannot believe it. Yeah, no, I'm all caught up. I don't see any here that are jumping out at me. We did have, we did have, like, one of the things I will mention is I've done several sessions on authorization forms and whether you should sign them for insurance companies. One thing I will say is that one part of my advice is that you always have the option to not sign them or to cross out sections and things like that. But just keep in mind, like, if you choose to go that route, it will result in stress on you because the insurance will come back, they'll have pushback, they'll make threats and demands. So this is why if you really don't want to deal with all the issues, just sign those authorization forms. Like, some of them are not ideal, but for practical reasons, especially if you can't deal with the stress of dealing with an insurance company pushing back, then you're often better just to sign those forms and let the insurance company do their thing. Otherwise, it can cause a lot of stress for people because it creates more tension and friction. So just keep that in mind. All right, let's see here. This person, is it harder to get CPPD or etc. or DTC? Okay. Um, that is a good question. I don't know that it's harder. It really depends on what your impairments are. They're not really comparable. Like I said, one focuses on your capacity for work. The other one focuses on very specific impairments with like vision, um, hearing, dressing, feeding, walking. So even having a severe impairment in some of these areas would not keep you from working. So this is why it's hard to answer that question. Is it harder to get it? Certainly the disability tax credit requires quite a high level of disability in certain areas of your life that often, like, for example, if you're someone who needs like care with feeding yourself, like obviously you're not going to be able to work. So that would seem to be harder to prove that you have a disability so severe that you can't feed yourself. It would be harder to prove that your disability is such that you can't work. But I think if I was to just say a general statement, yeah, it's probably somewhat harder to get the disability tax credit than CPP disability because the high level of disability you need with some of these areas of function to be able to qualify for the disability tax credit. And the Wallamala also asks, what does that say? Can you claim bad faith on insurance if they deny benefits? Bad faith. Okay, so let's talk about that. So when you have long-term disability insurance, one of the damages that you can sue for is bad faith. So bad faith damages happen when the insurance company does not, basically they have to do things that are intentionally, I'm trying to think of some of the language that's used. It has to be very very bad. It would be one way of putting it. Intentionally kind of very much focused on like trying to, let me just look it up. I'm trying to draw on a blank here because of the time of day, maybe on, I'm trying to think of the exact language they use. Let me get my language straight here. Yeah. So bad faith, think of bad faith is the insurance company has, in the context of an insurance claim, like it would mean the insurer is deliberately not following the rules of the policy or trying to trick you in some way or ignoring their obligations to be fair with you and they have certain good faith obligations to be fair in how they look at the medical evidence, to not apply rules that are not in the policy. So that is kind of what the good faith, and so if they're acting in bad faith, it means they're deliberately not doing some of those things. It often, to get to the level where people are going to be get compensation for bad faith behavior from the insurance, it does have to be to the level where they are deliberately trying to conceal things or lying. Like in Canada, to get compensation for bad faith, it's quite a high bar. So it has to be quite a high level of bad behavior in order for them to get it. Simply them having someone negligently kind of mismanaging your case or delaying things and things, there's a certain level of that will not rise to the level of bad faith damages in Canada. So what I would suggest is, if you have a case like that, to look at it, get a lawyer to help you look it over and figure out, in Canada, is this going to rise to the level of where a court will give compensation? There's two types of compensation you can get that are linked somewhat to kind of bad faith behavior by insurers. One would be mental distress damages that are paid if you actually suffer mental distress from their bad faith behavior, terminating benefits wrongfully, this kind of thing. The other one would be punitive damages. That's the one most people think of when they think of bad faith. To get punitive damages against the insurance company, they have to have such egregious behavior that is just shocking. It's very intentional, deceitful. It has to be all of those kind of things in order for a court to give that kind of bad faith damages in Canada. But, for example, in an insurance case, disability insurance case, bad faith behavior could include things like ignoring medical evidence, using sort of like ignoring it or distorting it. So like intentionally misinterpreting what doctors are saying in order to meet their own desires, that kind of thing. But yeah, that's pretty much it. So the answer to your question is yes. Bad faith, you can claim bad faith if benefits are denied, but it is a difficult thing to do. And quite honestly, it's very hard to get any compensation for bad faith unless you are taking your case all the way to trial. Insurance companies they will not acknowledge bad faith damages or pay them. It's not something they're going to say, "Oh, we're going to pay you so much for bad faith." That won't happen. You may reach a settlement with them that bad faith is a factor to get the settlement where it is, but they're never going to say that part of this is paying you for bad faith. It will just be kind of lumped in with everything else. If you go to trial, a judge can order them to pay bad faith damages. You often see with bad faith cases, there was a big trial in Halifax, Nova Scotia several years back. It was one of the biggest bad faith damage awards in Canada. But what happened is that amounts that were awarded were eventually cut back. So you will often see people get awarded bad faith damages at trial, and then the appeal courts will walk it back. So it's very disappointing a lot of times to get bad faith damages and then have the court come back and just walk them back. Here's an interesting one. Do insurance companies spy on your credit card purchase history? No, they cannot do that. They don't have access to that. They wouldn't have any ability to get that. Even if you sign one of those really broad releases, I don't think they would be able to get use those broad release forms to get into your credit card history purchases. The only time that they can actually see into that, if you're involved in a litigation, so you're involved in a lawsuit and you're claiming that that the insurance company, if you're claiming mental distress damages, or you're claiming that they've caused you to go bankrupt, therefore you had to lose your home and these kind of things. If you make these types of claims against the insurance company, that can open the door for them to get things like your payments. I've had that come up in several cases. I've in fact told people, like, let's not make this claim that they harmed your credit rating and that's now caused you to lose more money. Because if we make that kind of claim, the kind of compensation is going to be pretty low and it's going to be very invasive. They're now going to be able to go through all your credit card purchases and everything to judge whether it was the loss of payments that caused you to go bankrupt or just your bad spending habits kind of thing. So like, that's the only time, Tyler, that they're going to be able to get at that kind of stuff. It would have to be that you're suing them. It's in the context of a lawsuit and you're making claims where they will have an ability to examine your spending history just to see whether it was the loss of income or the loss of benefits, or was it your bad spending in general that caused you to go bankrupt. Right. Okay. I think I'm going to call it a day here. We got it's not really a sick puppy. He had an operation to get fixed, as they say. So my wife is really like worn out with trying to keep this puppy from running around and doing things. So I'm going to have to go up and give her a little bit of help here. So I'm going to go do that. I'll see the rest of you guys. I'm not going to be here tomorrow. I'll see you back here on Monday. Until then, I wish you guys all the best. And I will see you back here next week. Take care. And just like that, I'm back. I saw someone put a question in just before I left, so I'll answer it. If you're still here, Wama Lama is just ready to click off. Let's have a look. We'll answer this before we go. Can medical records be redacted, or does the insurance company have complete access to them? That's a good question. If you're in the context, I'll only talk in the context of litigation. So in the context of a lawsuit, you have an obligation to disclose all relevant information to the insurance company. Now, relevant information is a very low bar. And so just relevant means that it has some bearing on the issues in the matter. In order to be redacting parts of your records, that would be a pretty difficult thing to do. It would have to somehow have nothing to do with the disability or the issues. I'll see this come up sometimes where there might be embarrassing things in the records, medical records, that really doesn't have anything to do with you, but it might be embarrassing just to have that be seen. My advice is to tell people, just don't redact anything. As soon as you redact something in any records, basically you're putting a big sign saying this is the most important thing that the insurance company could ever want to know, and they will zero in on it. So something, especially if it's something you don't want to deal with or make a big deal of, and it's embarrassing, you want to redact it, it will just become a bigger issue. So you will redact it. The insurance company will now think that that is the most important thing in the world, and the whole secret of the case must be that. So they will make court motions, they will chase and do everything to try to figure out what is it that you're redacting. Because it's, like I said, it's like putting a big sign that says this is super important. So I encourage people not to redact. I talk a lot of my clients out of redacting for that very reason. There's just no point a lot of times. But it is possible to redact. Now, if you redact something and ultimately would go before a judge, and the judge would get to see what you've redacted, and if the judge believes that this is something that has to be disclosed, then you would be ordered to disclose it, or they will dismiss your lawsuit. And they'll also order you to pay the other side's legal fees for making this court motion and all this kind of thing. So this is an area I usually try to discourage people from doing redactions. but it is possible. All right. I think that now will be it. So with that, I will bid you guys farewell, and I'll see you back here on